Hi, welcome back to Quartertone Harmony. This episode, I want to talk about harmonic functions of chords on quartertone roots. Conventional wisdom holds that chords on the two fields are always very distant from each other. As Vygotsky wrote about modulating between the fields, transient chords, meaning chords from the same field, can bring us no closer to the key to which we wish to modulate. But that's not so. I'll show in this episode that there are many compelling relationships between chords on different fields, and these relationships are ones that could be used to build strong progressions and smooth modulations. Traditional harmony divides chords into three basic functions: tonic, dominant, and predominant, sometimes called subdominant. If we look at the notes of a major scale, chords based on the first, third, and sixth degrees are considered tonics. Chords based on the fifth and seventh degrees are considered dominants. And chords based on the second and fourth degrees are considered predominants. To grossly oversimplify, tonic chords tend to function as pause or rest chords. Dominant chords tend to lead to tonic chords, and predominant chords tend to lead to, unsurprisingly, dominant chords. The sequence of predominant to dominant to tonic creates something called a cadential progression, which is often used at the end of a musical phrase. As an example of how this can work, if we're in the key of C, we can make a sequence from the tonic chord C to the fourth degree predominant F to the fifth degree dominant G, and back to C. You can hear how each chord pulls you to the next, and the overall progression creates a sense of finality and completion. It's known that chords based on notes not in the scale can also sometimes have harmonic functions. For example, chords on the flattened seventh degree can sometimes function as dominant chords, even in a major key where they're not part of the scale. And this chord is sometimes called the backdoor dominant. Similarly, chords on the flattened sixth and second degrees can sometimes function as predominant chords. We know there is a relationship between a note and its 7th, 11th, and 13th harmonics on the other field. Maybe chords based on those notes can have harmonic functions as well. It makes sense to look at the inversions of those intervals, and based on something that comes up in this episode, I decided to throw in the note 1 quartertone below the tonic as well. Altogether, these 7 notes make up what I call the shadow scale. Not in the sense that you'd want to do runs on it, but in the sense of a shadow cast by a key and its scale onto the other field. I've labeled the degrees 9 to 15 in Roman numerals, like how the major scale is labeled, because names like inversion of the 13th harmonic get kind of unwieldy after a while. How to test function? Real simple. We'll take that example progression, swap out the chord with the function we want to test, swap in the chord we want to test, and listen to see if there's still some sense of a cadential progression. Ready? Let's test them. First, ninth degree, inversion of the quartertone 7th harmonic, as a predominant. Wow, I hit on the first try. That progression is using the technique of alternating pure field chords from the two fields. This is an old technique, as demonstrated by Miles Skinner, and still recommended today by music educators like the YouTubers Adam Neely and Hear Between the Lines. But it's not always the best approach. In this case, we can improve that progression by using a mixed field chord from the first episode, the harmonic 7th. That improves the progression because it removes a melodic field shift in the soprano. Melodic field shifts are a frequent problem when working with quartertones, and I'll bring up some more issues with it later in this episode. Oh, I'm getting an interruption from Poopy, my bunny. Oh, he just wants a little attention. Maybe a lot of attention. Ninth degree as a dominant. Not as strong as a predominant, but I still hear some function. Ninth degree as a tonic. No. 10th degree, inversion of the 13th harmonic, as a predominant. That seems to work too. As a dominant. Again, not as strong as predominant, but I still hear some function. And finally, 10th degree as a tonic. Maybe? And here I want to bring up another issue with melodic field shifts. Real music rarely plods along chord by chord, like these examples. Parts move around independently to create interest and variety. For example, in our reference progression, the soprano could move to the final chord ahead of the other parts, creating something called an anticipation. And that sounds fine. But try that with a field shift, and ouch. So for now, try to make melodic field shifts only as part of a chord change. That's not always enough, but usually it's a minimum. Now, 11th degree, the 11th harmonic. Oh, 11-11, that's kind of cute. It's like somebody planned it. As a predominant. I can go for that. As a dominant. That actually sounds pretty good. Odd that a chord could work well in both contexts, but that's how I hear it. And here I want to bring up another issue with melodic field shifts. Some commenters on my first video mentioned that vibrato made it hard to evaluate the chords, and that's a fair point. But I've found that vibrato is very important in softening melodic field shifts. That last progression sounds a lot rougher in a church organ tombo. I want to put these ideas in a best light, so I'm going to stick with string timbres for now. But to be fair, I have to admit that some of this doesn't sound as good in other timbres like organ or many percussion instruments. Finally, 11th degree as a tonic. That sounds more like a modulation to me. Next, 12th degree, the inversion of the 11th harmonic as a predominant. That's pretty strong, and it kind of has to sound like a secondary dominant, a dominant of the next chord, rather than a dominant of the key as a whole. And since the root of that chord is 1/4 step below the dominant chord that follows it, that's what made me want to use the note 1/4 tone below the tonic as part of the shadow scale. 12th degree as a dominant. That sounds like another yes to me. And 12th degree as a tonic. Again, sounds like a modulation. Next, 13th degree, the 13th harmonic. Oh, there we go again. It helps remember them. As a predominant. Are they all functioning as predominants? Well, I would say this one is. 13th degree as a dominant. Iffy. Although I like that progression for reasons that will come up in the next episode. And 13th degree as a tonic. Sort of, although not really convincing. 14th degree, the quartertone 7th harmonic, as a predominant. Once again, yes. 14th degree as a dominant. Maybe a little, but I'm going to say no to that one. 14th degree as a tonic. Once again, sounds more like a modulation. Finally, 15th degree, the note 1/4 step down from the tonic, as a predominant. That sounds more like 2 successive dominants to me, so I'm going to say no. Interesting sound on that chord though. As a dominant. Of course, what did you expect? And 15th degree as a tonic. Absolutely not. Okay, so what have we found? Here's a table with how I hear things. Almost everything works as a predominant. Many chords also work as dominants to varying degrees. Unsurprisingly, perhaps, they're not very good as tonics, with only 2 maybes in the whole bunch. Now, I know these judgments are real subjective. I've changed my own mind on a couple over time. I used to think the 9th degree was a better dominant and the 12th degree was weaker, and initially I thought the 14th degree was another mediocre tonic. I'm really interested in what other people hear in these progressions. And whether or not you agree with me, I'd really appreciate it if you put comments below. But I think there's no question that there are meaningful connections between these chords on different fields. The chords can be combined into strong progressions, just as the notes from different fields can be combined into good chords. I'm also really interested in how these progressions work in the other EDOs. Do they work much the same? Or are there differences because of differences in the quality of the overtone approximation, or because many EDOs don't have anything like 24th field segregation? Or perhaps people who work in other EDOs just hear it differently from me. That counts too. But in any case, I would really love hearing something like this in one of the other EDOs in the near future. Next episode, I have some really compelling extended quartertone progressions for you. And something so big that if I told you what it was, you'd say I was out of my mind. But even if I'm crazy, you want to tune in because you really do want to hear those progressions. For those of you interested in other EDOs, that something big applies to you too. And again, I'm asking you to tune in because, once again, I want to have your feedback. So hit like, hit notify, hit subscribe. I'll see you next time. Till then, keep making music and keep making a difference.